Smoking meat is an important part of preserving your meat for longer term settings. If you want to take your meat when you travel with you and you're not staying in a stationary base camp, you're going to want to smoke some of it so that you've got some calories on the move. So when you're doing that, first you've got to build yourself a platform, and you want it high enough up away from the fire where it's going to get enough smoke, but it's also not going to get enough heat to where it's going to cook. You don't want the meat to get over 160 or 170 degrees. We're just trying to put a good smoke coating over the entire thing. Now the problem with beaver, especially this time of year in winter, is that it's heavily laden with fat. In fact, this is one of the fattiest beavers I've ever caught in my life, and there's probably about almost 3 to 4 pounds of nothing but lard on this. So that's great for calorie resources, but it's bad for making jerky. So I'm going to take certain sections of this, some of the leaner sections of the meat, and I'm going to thinly slice that and prepare it for jerky. And when I mean thinly slice it, just like you get jerky at the store, you don't want it too thick. You want it thin enough to where it's going to dry out completely on the outside as well as the inside. Because if you leave it moist, or there's sections of the meat on the interior that don't get coated in smoke and don't completely dry out, that can get bacteria in it. There's a lot of options for cooking beaver. One of the kind of delicacies that a lot of people really love about beaver is the beaver tail. And you don't have to do anything fancy other than cut the tail off and get a little warming fire of coals off to the side, and you can toss this right on top of the coals and bake it, and the outer scales will essentially flake off when it's done, and then you can just take your knife and knock the scales off and eat the fat and meat out of it. And it is extraordinarily fatty. There's probably 4,000 calories just in this tail right here. And the beaver that we caught, since it is so fatty, has an extreme amount of calories. So in a wintertime setting, if you have the option to take one of these, and there's a lot of ways to get a beaver other than catching it with a conibear trap. I mean, you can hunt these things primitively. They come on shore at nighttime, and you can literally sneak up on these things and either whack them with a throwing stick or run up and spear them. But when making the jerky, we want to take the time to process any of the fat off of it. Fat can make your jerky go rancid. And then a more advanced technique is to make pemmican. And since this has so much fat, we could render the fat and use it to make pemmican. And pemmican is essentially ground up jerky that is coated with rendered fat, and it will last almost indefinitely. Whereas jerky, is really kind of dependent upon your environmental conditions. As long as you keep it dry, it's going to last a long time. But I typically, in a field type setting, you would want to eat your jerky within 3 to 6 months. As you can see on other sections of the meat here, this has got a high amount of fat. In order to jerky any of that, we would need to cut it all off. But beaver makes great steaks, so we're going to jerky some of this, and then we're going to cook up the rest on a flat rock. And there are so many options for bushcraft cooking. Sky's really the limit. You could cook this on a flat rock. You can, if you don't want to take the time to prepare anything, you can just cook meat right in the coals of the fire. Try to scrape the coals away from the ash, make a little section off to the side, and just throw your meat right on that. And a lot of people, that seems like it probably wouldn't taste that great, but once you knock the ash and the char off, it tastes just like any steak you'd cook on a grill. When making jerky, you're going to want to spend at least about 36 to 48 hours smoking this. And the more that you can cover it in smoke, the better. Another reason for bringing a poncho in a survival situation is we can take that poncho and drape it over the top of this so that the smoke will actually rise up into the poncho and collect, and it will coat our meat all that much better.